There exists a little-known, 400-year-old Japanese technique that promises to help anyone overcome procrastination and laziness without requiring motivation or effort. This is in stark contrast to the familiar feeling of being mentally paralyzed while staring at a to-do list, knowing exactly what needs to be done but being unable to start. Recent neuroscience research offers good news. This resistance is not true laziness, but rather a protective mechanism employed by the brain. Intriguingly, centuries before modern neuroscience, the samurai of Japan had already cracked the code to bypass this mental block. They called it kojutsu, an ancient philosophy centered on a mental game between truth and illusion, which had the power to transform the most difficult battles into simple, natural, and almost effortless movements. This principle can be applied in modern life to ensure that reliance on motivation becomes unnecessary. To understand the core truth about laziness, one must first observe that people are never lazy about activities that provide pleasure, such as spending hours on social media, binge watching a series, or playing a video game without any resistance or difficulty. However, when faced with tasks like studying, working out, or starting a life-changing project, everything suddenly feels heavy. The body freezes, and the mind conjures excuses. This leads to the first major paradigm shift. The problem is not a personal failure, nor a lack of discipline or willpower. According to a study by neuroscientists from Stanford University, procrastination is not a time management issue but an emotional management problem. Every time the brain associates a task with discomfort, anxiety, or fear, it activates a protective mechanism, which humans have labeled as laziness. The samurai discovered this truth 400 years before modern science, and this is where kojutsu, the samurai code, comes into play. The term kojutsu combines the words ko, meaning false, illusion, or disguise, and jutsu, meaning truth, technique, or reality. In practice, the samurai understood that fighting the enemy head-on was disadvantageous. Instead, they sought victory by using the enemy's own strength against them, creating illusions and unexpected movements that caused the opponent to defeat themselves. This principle is profoundly applicable to life, as our greatest enemy is not laziness itself, but our approach to it. Trying to fight resistance or force effort is a losing battle. The key is to learn to read the signs of the blockade, understand its source, and use it to your advantage, transforming what seems like a wall into an open door. A Harvard University researcher noted that the human brain is not designed to seek effort, but rather to conserve energy at all costs. Whenever the brain perceives a task requires more energy than necessary, it activates resistance, often mistaken for laziness. Kyujutsu teaches that all resistance and blockages stem from 3 specific sources. Understanding these sources is key to unlocking any task. The first is resistance to the method. This occurs when the chosen way to do a task doesn't align with one's natural style of thinking or working, for example, trying to type directly when one thinks better on paper. The second is resistance to time. This happens when a person attempts a task at a moment when their body's energy is not cooperating, such as trying to work late at night when their peak energy is in the morning or vice versa. The third, and most powerful, is resistance to purpose. This is often the reason for tasks that seem impossible to start. In many cases, the task itself should not even be on the list because it is no longer relevant or never truly mattered. This reveals a harsh but liberating truth. A person is not lazy, but simply misaligned. A University of Melbourne study found that 79% of people who abandon personal projects do so not due to a lack of discipline, but because they realize the project does not connect with what truly matters to them. The most curious and powerful realization is that the samurai had a remarkably simple technique that made procrastination impossible, applicable to any task, and initiated even before action is considered: strategic positioning. According to Miyamoto Musashi, the greatest swordsman in Japanese history, victory belongs to those who prepare the land. The untold truth about discipline and productivity is that failure is not a result of weakness, but because the battlefield is manipulated against you. For instance, a work environment full of distractions, vibrating phones, open social media tabs forces the brain to expend more energy resisting distractions than performing the task itself. However, by strategically cleaning the environment, leaving only the essentials visible, using concentration music, and even adjusting physical posture, what once felt heavy begins to flow naturally. This is not magic, but applied kyujutsu and neuroscience. The effort is removed because the environment does the work for you. Studies in neuroarchitecture support this. showing that disorganized environments can increase cortisol, stress hormone, levels by up to 32% and drastically reduce the ability to concentrate and make decisions. Before you begin, it's wise to save this information, as the following 5-step method, inspired by the techniques of the samurai, could fundamentally change the way you act. The first step is conscious observation. When you feel the familiar urge of resistance or procrastination, pause, breathe, and simply observe the physical and mental sensations, such as tension in your chest or the impulse to check social media. Simply recognizing what is happening immediately dismantles half the resistance. Next is the translation of resistance. Ask yourself if the resistance is toward the method you are using, the time allocated, or the overall purpose of the task. Your answer dictates the strategy change. Modify the method, adjust the schedule, or if the resistance is to the purpose, consider whether the task should even be in your life. Eliminate anything that doesn't help. Put your phone on airplane mode. Use blockers for social media and distracting websites, and ensure your workspace is so favorable that working becomes easier than procrastinating. The fourth step is crucial: minimum viable action. Telling your brain you will work for hours causes panic, but resistance evaporates if you commit to something incredibly small, like just opening your notebook and writing one sentence. The trick is to make the initial action so trivial it's impossible to refuse, understanding that starting is 80% of the battle. Finally, cultivate flow. Once you start, maintain your rhythm by using short focus cycles, 25 to 35 minutes, with quick breaks in between. This structured approach prevents the gaps where procrastination thrives. Tracking your progress activates an automatic motivation cycle. Research suggests that people who use short work cycles, like the Pomodoro technique, are 42% more likely to complete complex tasks than those who attempt long, uninterrupted blocks. The true power of this method, kutsu, is not about forcing hard work, but about fostering light work. When mastered, you realize a shocking truth. Productivity is not about effort, but about alignment. Many spend their lives fighting a rigged game, but by changing the game, you realize that what you call laziness was simply a sign of misalignment, not a personal flaw. When you learn to listen to this signal and adjust, movement becomes natural, effort ceases to be a burden, and the daily battle transforms into lightness, clarity, and direction. True change never begins with a giant leap, but with a micro-step of pause, a question, an environmental adjustment. Repeating these small gestures creates a new rhythm where you act out of clarity, not obligation, and your own path begins to pull you forward. The presenter encourages you to publicly declare the first micro-step you will take with kutsu to face a task today, as declaring your intention shifts your brain's processing. If this perspective resonates, subscribe for more content. Remember, the goal is not to work harder, but smarter, to flow instead of force, and to align instead of resist. The inner samurai already knows the path. You only need to stop fighting yourself and go with the flow, remembering that the real battle is internal in how you choose to play the game.